listening to Everyday Engineering, the City of Madison's engineering podcast where we talk about infrastructure. Complex topics explained simply, from the water that flows down your drain to the rain and snow that drains into the lakes. By way the curbs and streets we design. City engineering touches your life in so many ways. Explained right now in Everyday Engineering. Construction season, it's here all the time actually, because we can build all year round, but we want to dig into a project impacting our community this season. We're talking about Hammersley Road, southwest in the City of Madison. My name is Mohelnitzky, City of Madison Engineering Division Public Information Officer. I oversee communications for our division, and if you're listening to this and you've visited a public information meeting in the past, you've likely heard me working with our project managers and engineers on specific projects in those virtual settings. Today we have project manager and engineer Aaron Canton joining us to talk about his project, Hammersley Road. Thanks so much for being here, Aaron. Yes, so before we begin, I guess what you do for the engineering division when it comes to road reconstructions, what is your role, and we'll start there.
Yeah, so my role, I'm in the streets and paths section of the engineering division, so it's kind of twofold. My role, I'll do the street or path design, so the actual layout and geometry of it, as well as the elevations and grading for construction, and then I'll also oversee the project management for these projects through the planning, approval, design stages, going through the public involvement process, the city approval process, the actual designing, bidding aspects of it, making sure that the project gets built and the ship is steered. And
your background, what's your background?
My background,
Who are you?
Yeah, I went to UW Madison for undergrad in civil engineering, originally from the East Coast, from the Boston area, so came here for school. UW is a great school, and really glad I went there. Had a very good education and love living in Madison. And since I graduated in 2018, I've been working for the city engineering department on various projects like this.
So you love it here?
I do, yeah. Madison is a great place.
Yeah. So anybody listening, you know that your designer on this project lives here, loves it here, is here to stay. Hammersley Road. Okay, so, we get into construction season. Sometimes projects, they start in the fall, they reach, they kind of pause in the winter and continue in the spring. Sometimes it's just contained in the summer months. There's different phases, different types of projects. So I guess that's where, we want to focus on is specifically Hammersley, because people who are listening to this are most likely being directly impacted by Hammersley process. So if we're zooming in on the map, this area is southwest Madison, south of the Beltline. Where is this work actually happening specifically?
Yep, so that's a great question. This project on Hammersley is actually going to be over 2 phases. And so the total project limits is going to be from Brookwood Road to the Beltline by the Southwest Path. So that area is split up into 2 phases. Phase 1, which is getting constructed in 2023, is the stretch for Phase 1 is Brookwood Road to Gilbert Road. And then Phase 2, which will happen in 2024, is picking up where the Phase 1 left off, Gilbert Road to the Southwest Path, Beltline Frontage Road.
Okay. And if anyone is not familiar, what's in this area? Who's impacted by this project?
Yep. So this is a largely residential area.
Okay.
So folks living on that street are impacted. Hammersley is also a collector street for the general area. It sees a fair bit of traffic, varies based on the blocks over that long stretch, but anywhere between 1,000 and 3,500 vehicles a day.
That's quite a bit.
It is quite a bit, yep.
Yeah.
And there's also some major street crossings. Phase 1 includes the intersection at Hammersley at Whitney Way. Yes. Very busy intersection.
So busy.
Yep. People familiar with it. It's a pretty tricky hill. So that's a tricky spot. Certainly is gonna have some impacts during construction.
Is that tricky for you to design?
It is tricky, certainly. I think when you're designing crossing an arterial like Whitney Way, a busy road like that is, getting constant traffic, a truck route, a bus route, all of the above, definitely a big aspect of that. Designing is not just what it's going to be, but how it's going to be built, and that's the traffic control element. So for work across Whitney Way, especially, quite a lot of phasing for the traffic control there, because we have to make sure that traffic on Whitney is flowing. It's such a busy road.
Yes.
Can't shut it down. Luckily, specifically on that, Whitney is a boulevard, so there's a median in between. So what you're able to do is you're able to cross traffic over onto either side of the boulevard and work on, the non-traffic side.
Oh, so perks. So is that what makes a boulevard when there's something in the middle?
A median? Yeah, that's, I think in Madison,
That's a very
colloquially, that's
plain
the,
question from someone who's not an engineer, but but these are questions that I ask engineers all the time because I know that's what people are kind of wondering. What's the difference, right? So is that actually what makes a boulevard?
Yeah, in Madison, that's what I would say. I think different cities might have different
Sure.
different ways to define those things, but
Yeah.
a boulevard is a street with a median, a divided street.
Now you know. Yes, this is good. Okay, so and is it resurfacing or is it reconstruction?
That's a great question. It's a little bit of both.
And what's the difference?
Yeah, another great question. So first off, resurfacing is where you've got an existing street, probably with curb and gutter existing, and you're going to do utility replacement on this street. So you're going to rip up the center of the street, replace the utility mains, and then the laterals and services on either side, which will generally require ripping up some curb and gutter. And on a resurfacing, you'll kind of do spot replacement. So you'll do only what you need to replace the underground stuff.
So less disruption.
Less disruption. Still disruption, but generally you're able to, the street's in maybe a little bit better shape as is, and you're able to kind of get in and out without fully redoing the whole thing.
Sure.
And then that, as opposed to a reconstruction, where you can imagine you're just fully redoing the whole street, the pavement, the base, all the curb and gutter, sidewalk if there's any. So that's going to be kind of the full overhaul.
So what are we doing with Hammersley?
So Hammersley is kind of a little bit of both.
Okay.
On the south half of the street, and this is for the entire section of Hammersley from Brookwood to the Beltline. On the south half, it's going to look more like a resurfacing, where the streets, the pavement and base is replaced, but there will be curb and gutter that'll remain. So that'll be spot replacements based on what's needed. But then on the north half of the street, this is where the changes are more reconstruct, where we're actually bringing the existing curb on the north side in towards the street. So the street is getting narrowed. Parking on the street and bike lanes on the street are being removed. The street is getting narrowed to just the width of 2 travel lanes. And then on the north half, kind of within the existing street width that's there today, a shared use path is putting in, and that's going to be off-street, and that's going to be to accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians. And a big thing with Hammersley is today, on this whole stretch, there's no existing sidewalk, and that is was very specifically called out in quite a few planning documents, frameworks for streets that are in need of pedestrian facilities, of some sort of sidewalk or path.
Interesting. So I guess why the narrowing, first of all? That's my first question.
Yep,
What was
that's
the
a great
thought
question.
process?
So today the street is, a curb and gutter street, somewhat wide with on-street parking and no sidewalk on either side. And behind the curb, there's lots of mature trees. It's a really beautiful street, very mature canopy, and lots of difficult grading, lots of steep slopes, lots of retaining walls, lots of things going on. So on maybe a more typical situation, we would look to maybe construct sidewalk behind the existing curb if there isn't any, and weave it around, fit it in as best we can. But in this case, it really was just not, it was a non-starter to do that. It would have taken out so many trees, it would have required, feet and feet of walls. It would have been too much, and the impacts would have been too severe. So the reason for the street narrowing allows you to really stay within the existing street footprint. So behind the curb, not having substantial impacts to people's properties and landscaping and trees, but staying within that street footprint, narrowing it, and using that existing width to put in the shared use path to accommodate the bikes and pedestrians.
So making use with the space that we have,
Yeah,
right?
basically staying in the space that you have, making it a multimodal street,
Sure.
which basically just means for all users, for people walking, for people biking, transit users, and for people driving.
And you heard it here. We're trying to preserve trees.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, I want everyone listening to this to please understand that, because we get heat all the time for having to take down some trees in our processes, and we evaluate every tree. We double check with forestry They give us guidance on what can stay, what should go, all the things for the health of the trees. We love trees. So
Absolutely.
please know that. And this is a great example of that. Our design is working with the environment here in this case, and we're trying to make the most of our space and preserving as many trees as possible. So I wanted to go on the record for that because I hear a lot about that, and I'm sure you do too.
Absolutely.
So you have that one part where you're narrowing and you're making the most out of the space, and then on the other part, there isn't a bike space, and you're adding one.
Yep.
So those are big changes.
Yeah, definitely big changes. The street's going to look pretty different than it does today. There is on-street parking is being removed, as well as the on-street bike lanes.
Okay.
The idea being the bike lanes, the biking space is shifted to the off-street path.
Okay.
Which is, for a street like this, generally considered safer, a lot more comfortable for all users, not just the kind of sporty cyclists, but, kids biking to school, new bicyclists, anyone able to use it. And that's definitely a strong push from the city. When we look at our bike network, Madison, loves its bikes. It's super important for the city, and we're really trying to push towards anything new we build to really accommodate that all ages and abilities.
Yes.
Kind of the key phrase.
We talked about Whitney Way a little bit. Safety when impacting Whitney Way, it's so busy. It's such a busy area. I think of different areas. You have Gammon that's busy. You have Whitney Way that's busy. You have University that's busy. You have John Nolan Drive that's busy. East Wash is very busy. You think of some of these big kind of areas of like kind of coming out of our city a little bit, and this project will be impacting one of those. So I guess any other considerations that work into your either design or your planning or detours or things, if there are any, when it comes to impacting roads like Whitney Way.
Yeah, absolutely. It is hugely important. So traffic on Whitney Way will be maintained throughout construction.
Okay.
There will be a lot of orange barrels out there, and traffic will be steered to either side of the median at various times, and it'll kind of be shifting around over probably a 7 to 8 week period that work's occurring. But traffic will continue to be maintained. Trucks and buses will be able to continue to use the street. Obviously, things will be slowed down as it'll go from 2 lanes to 1 in each direction for a period around the construction.
Yep.
But it'll be maintained, and I think the traffic control is going to work pretty nicely for the area. And the contractor who's working out there is really great and really.
Who is that?
That is S&L Underground.
Okay. S&L Underground. Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Last questions. Disruptions during construction. We talked about the 2 to the 1 lane. Anything else that we missed?
Yep, so certainly there will be disruptions to folks living directly on Hammersley when work is happening. Hammersley itself is going to be closed to through traffic, which means people not on the street won't be able to use it, but people living there will be able to access it. The street will be ripped up and go through a lot of stages. It'll be a gravel road most of the time, but it'll still be accessible. And on this street, because there's not really great side street, off-street parking options, we made sure that driveways will be maintained. So throughout construction, folks will be able to access their driveway. And this includes when the concrete items like the curb and gutter and the driveway aprons are being poured and curing. That's a little atypical, but for this situation, we wanted to make sure folks would still be maintained.
Timeline. Let's talk timeline if we don't have any other disruptions.
Yep, so the phase 1 of the project, which again is going to be from Brookwood Road to Gilbert Road, is happening pretty much over the entire construction season of 2023, looking at kind of April to September timeframe. I'll say the Whitney Way work is going to be happening more in the April-March period.
Okay.
Or April-May, sorry, and going to be happening first. And then all goes planned, the phase 2 portion, which again is going to be from Gilbert Road on Hammersley to the Beltline Frontage Road and the Southwest Path. That's going to happen in 2024 over a pretty similar kind of April to September timeframe.
Okay, so much going on. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, the only other thing I would add specific to the project that's pretty exciting about it is with the shared use path going in on Hammersley over this stretch, over the 2 phases, it's going to connect in really nicely to the Southwest Path, right where it crosses over the Beltline Frontage Road. And that's really going to expand some of the kind of larger bike network for Greater Madison. The Southwest Path is going to have a direct vein into the city, directly into the downtown area, connect to the Capital City Trail, and Hammersley will take you, where it ends on the west side, towards Elver Park and kind of the outskirts of the city.
Sure.
The path won't go all the way to Elver, but it'll get you farther there in a much safer situation. So it's really going to be a nice addition to the Greater Madison Bike Network.
Well, that is huge in itself. Yes, that's great. And if you know somebody who is listening, or if you're listening to this and you know somebody who would benefit from that, please share it with them so that they can hear directly from the designer making it all happen. Aaron, thanks so much for stopping by.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be here.
Yes, this is good. You heard it here, Hammersley. If you want to stay connected, head over to the Hammersley project page on the city's website. We update it. Aaron updates it. I work with all the engineers to make sure all our project pages, the most clicked section of the engineering division website, and it's one of the top ones in the city, actually, out of all the agencies, because people are impacted by these projects and they want updates directly from the people doing them. So just Google Hammersley Road and it should pop up City of Madison in your search engine if you can't find it. Just email us. Or if you have questions, feel free to reach out to Aaron Canton, acanton@cityofmadison.com. Again, thank you, Aaron, for stopping by. If you have a question about this podcast, send us an email at engineer@cityofmadison.com because we're always here for you every day in engineering.